Hello and welcome to Hysteria. I'm Erin Ryan.
And I'm Alyssa Mastromonaco.
Alyssa, serious question. Are there any good airlines?
Oh, man, you know I'm getting ready to fly and I'm so stressed about this.
I mean, I feel like JetBlue used to be good.
It used to be great. It used to be my favorite. And it's like
happened?
all of them are just going tits up right now.
Build us a train, Mayor Secretary Pete.
Secretary Pete, give us a high-speed train across America, please.
Just at least from Alyssa's house to my house.
You know,
so we can hang out.
I would take the train to see you. You know I would take that journey. Or better, we could like meet in the middle of the country and like explore together.
I'm picturing a little like whistle-stop town with
are you
fried
kidding?
green tomatoes
Matching
cafe.
backpacks.
Okay, Alyssa, news this week. I'm really excited about the interview. I kind of am bummed out about the news. So maybe we should just
Let's just
easy breezy.
tick through the news, you know? Tick through it. The Supreme Court is at it, Erin.
No.
They're at it. But I guess how does it all come down? It could be worse. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, they're done. So the Supreme Court's term is done this week. It really is annoying how opaque the whole thing is.
Yes.
Yeah, like on Monday, I looked at the calendar and it's like, oh, there's opinions on Tuesday and no more opinions. And then, no, but actually that doesn't mean anything. It's so annoying. Get with the rest of us.
Then they're gone until the end of September, beginning of October. So
they got to go on their vacations. They got to take their billionaires on vacations.
Hiatus.
They got to take go fishing.
Go get some salmon. Well, before they can head off for salmon, Erin, they dropped some opinions this week, starting earlier this week. And it hasn't been as bad as people feared, but like, come on, our bar for this court is so low. It is a corruption machine, and we cannot lose sight of that, even if they sometimes do things that aren't disappointing. Right. And so let's see. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court denied state legislatures the unchecked power to set election rules. The synopsis alone tells you it's like, okay, that sounds correct. Like, imagine if they had done the opposite.
Right. It's like if you had me house sitting for you when you were on vacation and I sent you a text and I was like, Alyssa, I'm pleased to announce that I didn't piss in your living room.
Thank you so much, Erin.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Erin, you're a great house sitter because you didn't piss in my living room.
Exactly. So in this decision, many consider a major decision. It turns away a conservative push to empower state legislatures. By a 6-3 vote, the court rejected the, quote, independent state legislature cuckoo nut theory in a case about North Carolina's congressional map, considered a fringe theory. It broadly argued that state courts have little or no authority to question state legislatures on election laws for federal contests.
Oh, God. That was like another Air Bud legal theory. Where they're like, it doesn't say dogs can't be president. But on one hand, it's like, well, the Constitution does say that it is the state legislature's responsibility, but it also doesn't say that state legislatures can't be checked. Anyway.
Exactly. Also on Tuesday, the Supreme Court made it more difficult to convict someone of making a threat. Okay.
Including against a president or elected officials. I feel like, and I'm not out here encouraging anybody to threaten anybody, but
no,
I feel
of course not.
I feel like we're in a very politically charged moment, and it seems to me that the justices, there are some concrete and recent examples of the justices being subject to threats. So it's strange to me that would be like, nah, we're going to kick that in our own goal this time. It seems not good. The case involved a man who was sentenced to more than 4 years in prison in Colorado for sending threatening Facebook messages. The guy's lawyers argued that he suffers from mental illness and never intended his messages to be threatening.
Allegedly.
Yeah, I know plenty of mentally ill people, and they tend to have a sense of when things are threatening and not threatening. But, whatever.
Also on Monday, the Supreme Court allows for Louisiana. Now, Erin, this is the only time your witch hat has been slightly askew. The only time. In 260 episodes, the only time your witchery has gone slightly off track.
You say askew, I say jaunty. It was
jaunty.
Tilted
you know
jauntily.
What? It stopped for a snack on the way.
Okay.
The Supreme Court allowed for Louisiana congressional map to be redrawn to add another majority black district. The justices reversed plans to hear the case themselves and lifted a hold they placed on a lower court's order for a reworked redistricting regime. There were no noted dissents. Okay. The way the lines were previously drawn limited the impact of black voters. So we'll take this.
Yeah. This is, look, they also ruled on Monday that a North Carolina charter school that is a public school cannot force girls to wear skirts. They declined without comment to hear an appeal from the charter day school in the eastern North Carolina town of Leland. A federal appeals court had previously ruled that the school's dress code violated students' constitutional rights. So basically, your public school, you can't be like, hey, ladies, dress like we're in Handmaid's Tale auditions.
Though the part of that really concerned me was that the school founder said the dress code was intended to promote chivalry. What? Like, what?
Unless you are literally installing a way for me to pee without having to sit on a toilet, like lady urinals where I can just hike my skirt up and pee in a lady urinal. Like, don't make me wear a skirt unless it benefits me. That's ridiculous. Also, like, you want to be a private school then.
Yeah.
You're taking public, be a private school. That's the deal. There are a few other things that the court has ruled on this session. I think one thing that gets kind of lost in the shuffle is we're all sort of like mildly relieved that they didn't further gut the Voting Rights Act and they didn't force girls to wear skirts in school in North Carolina. They did really take a swing at the Clean Water Act. They really, which impacts pretty much everybody in the U.S. Drinking polluted water is largely considered bad, medically bad. So that's not great. And they have been an enemy to the environment, and they are still enemies to bodily autonomy for women everywhere. Like, this is still the court that overturned Roe v. Wade last year, and now, like, tens of millions of women live in states where they can't legally access abortion care. So, I feel like a lot of coverage is like, oh, look, they're not doing it. It's like, no, fuck them. Fuck them.
No.
There's no unfucking them.
They sat down at dinner and there was a menu of terrible, and all they did was just skip a few sides.
Exactly. They ordered all the rest of it. And on Thursday or Friday, we don't know because these divas are drama queens. On Thursday or Friday, we're going to learn about what they've decided in the affirmative action case that could make race-based considerations in college admissions illegal. There are some states where it's already not a thing, like in California, race-based considerations are not a thing. But it could make it illegal across the country.
Right.
I think what else are we waiting on for the Supreme Court? We're waiting on, student loan relief. Student loan relief.
Right.
So we're waiting to see if the court agrees with some Missouri whiny bitches that allege that Biden overstepped his executive authority by forgiving student loan debt for certain borrowers. So we're going to see.
I think we both think those may not go well.
I feel like they like to save the little fart for right before they exit the elevator.
I mean, you mean right before 4th of July week?
Yeah, exactly.
The day that they may likely drop these opinions is actually by the FAA being called the busiest potential travel day since before COVID.
It's funny. It's not funny. Haha. It's like funny. To imagine the court being like, oh, and you still owe the $20,000. Bye.
See ya. But what I hope they think about is that, as me personally, if I am sitting there and my flight is canceled in the airport, it's not going to make me take this news any better.
Yeah, exactly. See, this is why I drive, even in the massive proportions of the American West. I'm like, you know what? I would rather drive 10 hours than an hour to the airport, then wait 2 hours, and then an hour-long flight, and then it takes an hour to get out of there. I'd rather just drive. It's fine. Okay, Donald Trump's an idiot still.
Oh, my God. When can we stop getting breaking news alerts about him?
I don't know.
It's exhausting.
So CNN got access to an audio recording of the former president and his team discussing the fact that they had documents that they shouldn't have.
Let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack Iran. Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look. Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information. But look, this was done by the military, given to me. I think we can probably, right?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to
Declassify
figure out
it. See, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't, but this is classified.
Now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. It's so cool.
They can't declassify them, but they are going to show them to people who are not authorized to see them anyway. And that sounds like I'm making it more sophisticated than the recording actually did. It's like, yeah, you're not supposed to see it, but want to look? Here you go. And it's like, and it's not only that. It's not only that, like, he admits that he knows that the documents are secret. He knows that he can't make them declassified anymore because he's no longer the president. He's not supposed to show them to the person he's about to show them to. And then he does it anyway. And his legal team, he says, these are the papers.
These are the papers. What a sophisticated sentence.
He also asks for somebody to go get them some Cokes.
Some Cokes. And Erin, the best part of all this is these papers were about a plan of attack on Iran. What?
Yeah, and
just hanging out by the pool being like, let me show you something else. It's not funny, but it's so stupid you can't help but laugh.
What is also funny is that it is for the writer that Trump was wagging these papers in front of was writing Mark Meadows' memoir. Like, nobody who gives a fuck about Mark Meadows?
Who is showing off for Mark Meadows' biographer?
Yeah, Donald Trump. He will show off for anybody, including the person ghostwriting Mark Meadows' biography. And it's funny because, like, honestly, congratulations to Mark Meadows for innovating a new way to sell books because nobody was going to read that book. And now I think a lot of people are. A medium amount of people are.
But, I mean, is there going to be anything left in the book by the time this indictment and trial is over? It seems like a lot of the book's going to end up being evidence.
It'll be in a museum, though. It'll be in a museum.
Tiny, tiny museum.
Oh, God. Okay. Alyssa, you had one more story you wanted to talk about. I did have
one more. Everyone on this planet talked about what was going on during the trying to raise the submersible for the 4 days that we all saw it plastered on the news.
The billionaire trip to the bottom of the sea.
Exactly. And so you and I had talked about this, but we wanted to flag that the far-right Italian government hates immigrants, and they will go to astounding lengths to prove it. Here is someone we think more people should know about. Pia Klemp, a German sea captain, one of just a handful of female boat captains, was recently sentenced to 20 years in prison because she helped rescue over 1,000 migrants who were trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea. Klemp said she's going to fight this all the way to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. But, like, what the fuck?
Yeah, Italy is really fucked up.
It is dark. And like, she saved people's lives. Like, what was the alternative? She was supposed to cruise by? It is sickening. And especially, she is one person with one boat who saved 1,000 migrants. And it took the United States and Canada to try to get the 5 people in the submersible. I'm just saying, give a job to a woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and migrants drowning while trying to cross the Mediterranean is a serious ongoing issue. Just a couple weeks ago, I think kind of during the beginning of the coverage of the submersible that everybody was talking about, there was a boat that sank off of the coast of Greece. And there's an investigation into whether the Greek Navy actually hampered the rescue.
Right.
And it's truly heartbreaking and truly awful. So we'll be setting up a Google alert for Pia Klemp because this better end with her getting a parade for doing the right thing.
Yes.
Okay, really excited for today's interview. We've got to take a quick break, but stick around and we will be right back. Welcome back to Hysteria, the podcast that appreciates a savory jam and a spicy take. Today, we are excited to be welcoming back this Hysteria fave. She's the chairwoman of the Senate Democratic Steering and Outreach Committee. She currently sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and her new memoir, The Joy of Politics, Surviving Cancer, A Campaign, a Pandemic, an Insurrection, and Life's Other Unexpected Curveballs, is out now. She can also summon snow simply by stepping up to a podium. Senator Amy Klobuchar, welcome to Hysteria.
Well, thank you, Erin. That was the best intro ever. And thank you, Alyssa. It's great to be on.
Senator, let's start by talking about your book. Why did you decide to write a memoir now?
Well, everyone in our country has been through hell, really, from the pandemic, the divisiveness in our politics. And I wanted to write it because I thought that my experiences actually reflected what a lot of people had. There were some that were unique, I will admit that, but my husband getting COVID, he's now arriving right on time to deliver milk in the back here. I just heard him. Oh, he defied us. He went the other way. Anyway, my husband getting COVID, the going through breast cancer, really being isolated from so many people. My dad got sick and died during the pandemic. And, I had the same experience so many people could have, not being able to visit him, having a really, really small funeral because of all the rules in place. And all of that was experiences other people had. But the other thing I wanted to do was, instead of just lamenting the setbacks, because we can spend a lot of time doing that right now, it's also rejoicing in the comebacks. The way I've seen it, our country has come back. People are gathering again. You're starting to see people that maybe you didn't even want to see before the pandemic at work, but you got to deal with them. And we're just in a much better place. And so I wanted to tell that story as well, including getting through cancer and all the people that helped me, and getting through the insurrection, out to the other side, onto that inaugural stage where I got to be the first person to introduce President Biden after he got sworn in. All of those stories were part of my life since the presidential. And I felt it was important to talk about how there's joy in our politics, because there's just so much negativity out there right now. Some of it produced by politicians, some of it coming from the outside. But in the end, there's actually some fun. There's joy in getting things done, in getting benefits for a veteran, in helping someone with an adoption, even saving their honeymoon with a passport problem. That is actually joy. So when you get a card in the mail from them with their little happy honeymoon in Mexico. So those are the kinds of things that I talk about in the book.
In your book, Senator, it sounds like a lot of people you disagree with politically are also among the colleagues that you think of very warmly, like Tom Tillis, Roy Blunt, and John Thune. Who are some of the people furthest from you politically, but who you consider the closest friends?
Okay, so one person who is just a pain in many ways is to many people, because he slows down a lot of legislation. But we were kind of thrown together on the antitrust subcommittee. That's Mike Lee. He's one of the most conservative people in the Senate. But we have found a way to work things out and to be able to work together. An example of that recently was when the Taylor Swift Ticketmaster thing blew up. I knew we were going to have a hearing, but it's much better if we do a hearing together. Mm-hmm. He actually sent me a copy of the text and gave me permission to say it publicly, that his daughter had sent him, who is a big Taylor Swift fan. The text said, "Dad, if you don't do something about it, I am calling Amy Klobuchar directly." I once got his family. They were someone didn't have the right ID to go to the White House when President Obama was in, Alyssa, in your time. And they were somehow set aside. There was some boyfriend of someone. I had to intervene to help with that. There have been many amusing moments. And so that's an example. I think maybe someone who is a little closer ideologically, more of someone who was more constructive within the Senate would be Roy Blunt and Rob Portman. I went to Ukraine with Rob in August of last year, right in the middle of the war. And we worked on so many things together with regard to Ukraine and the security investigation of what went wrong after January 6th. And Roy and I headed up the Rules Committee together. And that has been a lifelong friendship, actually, involving, 4 a.m. It was Roy and me and Vice President Pence that were making that walk with the 3 pairs of young women with the mahogany boxes, with the last of the electoral ballots from the Senate to the House, to make sure that democracy would prevail, walking over broken glass. Roy was devoted to making sure that the inauguration went off, and it went off beautifully, and that it was outside on the platform where the insurrectionists had invaded, and the 2 of us pulled that off together. So those are things you don't forget in your life. When there are those things that are so important to the nation. But just as important are the little things we did together, including changing the Senate rules to get Tammy Duckworth's baby on the floor, which I recount in the book.
This, Senator, another part of the book that I just couldn't get enough of is when you're talking about you, another of your favorite Republicans, John McCain, and Bernie Sanders sitting together during the inauguration, seeing Trump be inaugurated. You all realize it's utterly catastrophic. But then you go inside to sit down for lunch as chairman of the Rules Committee. You're seated next to Trump's brother.
Yes.
What did he choose to talk to you and your husband
no
about?
No one has asked this question except you, Alyssa.
Thank you.
That is very funny. Yes, I put that in there and I thought, is anyone going to notice? Yes, he spent most of the lunch asking about our astrological signs. That is correct. And he had some maybe insightful comments about my husband and me and what that meant when I was a Gemini, but I am not revealing.
Oh my God.
That was another part. I remember former Senator Cory Gardner was also at the table from Colorado with his wife, and they are witnesses to this moment in history. But we all agreed it would stay there except for the general discussion and that he was very obsessed with our astrological signs. I also told the story in that part about the inaugural stage, where when the Trump guests start coming up, John McCain, who was always irascible and such a good friend, turned to me and said, this inauguration is setting an all-time record in America. And I thought he meant some, grand history moment. I go, what? He said, most money ever spent on plastic surgery.
Oh, John.
Anyway,
wow.
So he also was, as it went on, we were all in good behavior, including Bernie, because, it's the inauguration. It was a shocker moment. But as the speech got darker and darker, McCain started reciting names of dictators and Mussolini and actual speeches. I didn't write it down, but there were actual dates of speeches because he was such a student of history. And I always felt, including his decision to go with me and Lindsey, he planned this trip, Lindsey Graham, right before the inauguration, after Trump got elected to Ukraine, believe it or not, yes, and Georgia, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. He wanted to show those nations that we were on their side because he was just on to a lot of what was going to be happening with Trump in a big way. And that is part of what was going on that stage, but also part of what he did in those next years before he died, including voting to uphold the Affordable Care Act.
Senator, here on Hysteria, we pride ourselves on having a pretty good track record for predicting the way that news stories are going to unfold. What's a major event or development that you've successfully predicted during your life in politics, even though people might not have believed you at the time?
This one, I don't know if I put this in there or not, but when the Supreme Court debated the Affordable Care Act, we had our caucus lunch. And I remember John Kerry had been there. He went to it. I didn't go to it. He went to it and he stood up and said he was really concerned because of, the questions that were being asked by certain justices, and everyone was so glum. And I stood up. I just had a strong feeling about it. And I said, Harry Reid at the time was running the caucus. And I said, I think that they're going to uphold it. And I think Roberts is going to not just vote for it, he's going to write the opinion. And that's what I said. Okay, so fast forward, the decision comes out, it's upheld. Roberts writes the decision. I remember it was again a Tuesday when we had our lunch. And I walked in, I thought, no one's going to remember that, as usual. But Harry Reid stood up. He goes, before we begin, I'd like to say there was only one person in this caucus that got this right. And he said it was Amy, that it would be upheld, that Roberts would write the decision. But here's the funny part. And then that the decision would be made based on this esoteric tax theory, which I never said. But you have those moments where you're like, whatever. That was a moment where I predicted something, yes.
Senator Klobuchar, I wish you could have heard Senator Reid's review of my first book, which he called readable. I wish he was here to read your book. Okay, after writing this book, is there something you didn't know about yourself when you ran for president that you wish you'd known?
Well, I think that I knew a lot of my flaws going into running for president. I think that one of the things that I learned from it was, you've got to be really kind to people, and I talk about a bit in the book about some of the stories that came out about me, and some of them were true, some of them weren't true, some of them were in between, and you can't really get into the whole thing. But clearly, when I didn't really know it, I'd hurt some people's feelings. A lot of it was like, I apologized sometimes at the time, but pushing for these expectations that I had. So I kind of learned a lot about that in a hard way, and have taken that with me. I think that the other thing that I learned from all of this was just the incredible kindness and goodness of the people of our country. And I knew that in my own state, but just the way people would show up, and these are in, this is in Iowa or New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada, or really many of the other states that we were heading into on Super Tuesday. They would just show up because they believed in something. They wanted to tell their story of how their daughter had gotten hooks on drugs, and they were now taking care of their granddaughter in a little backpack in the back, and that we had to do more on addiction, or that there weren't enough mental health beds in Iowa. I mean, it was incredible. Those things are forever seared on my memory, how these people would show up and tell these stories. Some people show up are there for groups, right? They have them come and they're mean or they're nice or whatever, but they have a plan. Then there's like legit citizens that are just showing up. In New Hampshire, hundreds and hundreds of people just showing up to evaluate the candidates because they feel like it's their constitutional duty to do that. And those are things you don't forget about America.
So let's head home to Minnesota for this next question. Progressives in Minnesota have enacted an impressive amount of legislation this session with only a one-seat majority, including paid family leave and legalizing recreational marijuana use. Why was the Minnesota DFL so productive? And what can the rest of the country learn from them? And we're asking you this because you know Minnesota, you're like wildly popular. Give us some insight.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we were doing things for the right reasons. That's always a good thing, and people knew that. I think that we were organized and had worked hard on a number of the policies. And you actually saw some of the same things with our 0 vote margin, 50-50 in the U.S. Senate, when we were able to, with the tie-breaking vote of Vice President Harris, we're able to pass the Inflation Reduction Act. You saw the work we did bipartisan across the aisle on infrastructure and those things. And I think the thing that Minnesota to remember, we are a state that has the highest voter turnout in the country. We have a lot of independents, actually. If you don't believe me about that, I have 3 words for you: Governor Jesse Ventura. What was interesting about this, that while some of the races were quite close, Secretary Simon probably did the best because he was pushing fair elections. What's interesting about it is that their positions when it came to things like school lunch and other things did reflect where the majority of Minnesotans were. It's just that I think in our politics right now, that just gets so messed up. And I think that they felt, the governor and the people in the legislature felt they had an obligation to move forward with what people needed. And there was just a lot of pent up things, including some changes to our election laws that needed to be made that hadn't been made. So I think it was just the idea that they were reflecting where the people were in our state, and they had wanted to move forward, and they were organized, and they felt that they had a mission to get it done, and they got it done. And they were just incredibly productive.
Okay, Senator, before we let you go, Erin and I are here under the guise of an interview, but really we are here for an intervention. Your intervention, because we loved your book and we think it should be a show. We think it should be a TV show. And who would you want to play you? Because we have pitches.
Okay, I think I want to listen to you guys because, I really am not going to go there.
I think you should.
And especially, you got to have someone, remember, they got to be able to deal with hot flashes. That's in the book.
Oh, I love the hot flashes. Put my head in the fridge. Erin, who was your first pitch?
So here's why we pitched these people. They need to be capable of being funny because you are the funniest
Very
senator.
funny.
You're the funniest senator, hands down. You're real funny, not just Washington funny. That's real.
Thank you.
So they have to be capable of being funny, and they also have to be capable of being a serious person dealing with serious issues. So our first pitch was Laura Dern.
Yep.
Oh, very cool. I have to divert there.
Our second pitch was Katie Seagal, who is like a brilliant comedian, and she's a great serious actor. And then Alyssa's, what was yours?
Okay, so picture it, Senator. Frances McDormand in Nomadland meets Something's Gotta Give, right? It's like...
this is a Minnesota connection.
And Fargo, yes, of course. Fargo.
Right. Well, no, the Coen brothers, of course, grew up in St. Louis Park, and they actually had one of my dad was a columnist, but a sports writer as well. They had one of his old books about the Vikings during the Simple Man, the movie that they did about growing up Jewish in Minnesota. That book was on the coffee table in
That's
the movie.
Awesome.
Oh.
And I got to go to the opening of the movie, and she was there. And so, she's great. And she was incredible in Nomadland.
All right. Alyssa's writing it down. We're going to get Frances
we'll
McDormand.
Be back on this. We'll be back on this.
Senator Klobuchar, thank you so much for joining us and for writing your excellent book. Listeners, it is available wherever books are sold.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.